This is CNN Breaking News.
Not guilty on all 6 counts. Not guilty. Roger Clemens, the baseball giant, the baseball great, accused of perjury, lying to Congress about steroid use. The jury, a federal jury, has now come back and says he is not guilty. Not guilty on count 1, obstruction of Congress. Not guilty on count 2, false statements during deposition. Not guilty on count 3, false statements during deposition. Not guilty on count 4, false statements during deposition. Not guilty on count 5, perjury during the hearing, the congressional hearing. Not guilty, count 6, perjury during the hearing as well. Not guilty, all 6 counts. Wow. What a dramatic development. Jeffrey Toobin is our senior legal analyst. I don't know about you, but a lot of people are probably going to be surprised. Not guilty on all 6 counts. The federal prosecutors failing completely.
Absolutely. Coming on the heels of the John Edwards failure in North Carolina. Not a great series of events for the Justice Department. The key witness here was Brian McNamee, who was the trainer who testified that he injected Clemens repeatedly with steroids and claimed to have kept some old bandages and whatnot that proved it. His credibility was totally attacked by Rusty Hardin, the lead defense lawyer. The jury obviously did not believe McNamee, and this is a complete and total vindication for Roger Clemens.
Complete, and I'm going to play 2 clips that were at the heart of this entire federal trial, this perjury trial against Roger Clemens. Here's what he said. He was testifying before Congress on February 13th, 2008.
I told the truth about steroids and human growth hormone. I injected those drugs into the body of Roger Clemens at his direction.
That was not Roger Clemens. Here's Roger Clemens.
I have never taken steroids or HGH.
All right, so Roger Clemens was second, and Brian McNamee was first. Brian McNamee was the prosecutor's star witness right there, and he says that he injected Clemens repeatedly, and Roger Clemens flatly denied it. The jury obviously siding with Roger Clemens and finding him not guilty on all 6 counts. It looks like he had no credibility at all, Jeffrey, with the jury.
Certainly not. And, it's worth noting that the whole steroids controversy, whatever else it has happened, it has not led to very successful criminal prosecutions. The Barry Bonds case out in San Francisco took years to come to trial. He was convicted only on very minor charges. Those charges are on appeal. He got a essentially no he got no prison sentence at all. He got a little home arrest. The Roger Clemens case, remember, this case began with a mistrial because of prosecutorial misconduct. This was a second attempt by prosecutors to convict Roger Clemens, ends in complete vindication for Clemens. Lance Armstrong has been investigated for years. No charges ever brought. So I think whatever the world thinks about steroids, this has not led to successful criminal prosecutions in the United States, at least when it comes to the really big names involved.
Our justice correspondent, Joe Johns, was inside the courthouse when all of this came down. He's now joining us. Joe, tell us what it was like inside. Not guilty, all 6 counts involving Roger Clemens.
I got to tell you, it's not that big a surprise, Wolf, in a lot of ways. As Jeff just mentioned, you had the mistrial that occurred earlier. Now this, just not a good month or so for the United States government on its prosecutions. Also, a couple other things I think that are really important to point out, Wolf. This wasn't your typical obstruction case. This was an obstruction of Congress case. This all started on Capitol Hill with that appearance in 2008 in 2 separate places of Roger Clemens speaking first in a deposition and then later in a hearing on Capitol Hill before the Reform Committee, in which he denied again and again that he'd ever taken steroids, that he'd ever taken human growth hormone. And so now we get to this point with the steroids issue, and I think Jeff's absolutely right. This is the kind of thing that perhaps juries don't care about as much, and I think just common sense will tell you. I know in talking with people out in the country, and even just yesterday here in Washington, D.C. at the Yankees game when the Washington Nationals played the Yankees, this was the kind of question that people ask: why is the government doing this. Why is the government involved? Simple answer. Congress said Roger Clemens needed to be prosecuted, and now this jury here in the District of Columbia has said he's not guilty. Wolf.
It's sort of a slap also. I think it's a pretty significant slap potentially, but let me ask you what you think, Joe. George Mitchell, the former U.S. Senator, he was commissioned by Major League Baseball to do a study on steroid use, inappropriate steroid use by baseball players. He came out with his report in December 2007, and he alleged that Clemens used steroids, HGH, in 1998, 2000, 2001. Clemens denied those allegations under oath in a deposition and at that congressional hearing. This would further seem to vindicate Roger Clemens and not necessarily the former Senator George Mitchell's report.
It certainly would seem that way. And, George Mitchell has always been very highly regarded here in Washington, D.C. He put out that report, and it set off shockwaves across baseball. Of course, being the national pastime, a lot of people on Capitol Hill very concerned about the idea that performance-enhancing drugs might be used by people playing in baseball at this level. Nonetheless, this jury speaking says quite a bit here in Washington, D.C. today. Apparently, either, and it could be a couple possibilities, either they just didn't believe the case or they didn't believe that Roger Clemens actually used performance-enhancing drugs. What we really want to know is what the jurors are saying once they get out of this building. And so that's the question we'd like to pose to them.
You'll let us know what they say, whether they found the star witness, Brian McNamee, totally not believable, if you will, when he made these specific allegations. Brian McNamee presumably was much more credible in the eyes of George Mitchell. All right, stand by, everyone. We'll take a quick break. We'll stay on top of the breaking news and all the day's important news right after this.